Chapter 13. That's all? Marco asked. Just the fate of the human race? Don't you have something more challenging for us? But the Ellimist wasn't paying attention to Marco. We do not interfere in the private affairs of other beings, he said. But when they are in danger of becoming extinct, we step in to save a few members. We love life, all life, but especially sentient life forms like Homo sapiens, your species. This is a very beautiful planet, a priceless work of art. You've obviously never seen our school, Marco said, still giddily trying to joke. Suddenly, without warning, the Ellimist did it again. He opened space. We were no longer standing in the Yerk pool. We were no longer underground at all. We were underwater, deep underwater. But the water did not seem to touch my skin, and when I breathed, there was still air. Still, I felt fear tingle the back of my neck. We stood, me, Cassie, Jake, Marco, Axe, and Tobias. Tobias in his own human body, in the middle of an ocean, suspended in the water, but dry. The Ellimist could no longer be seen. We were floating above a coral reef, and everything was moving again. All around us, fish swam in, drifting, darting, schools. Fish in every color and shape, reflecting the dappled sunlight from above. Sharks prowled. Stingrays seemed to fly. Squid pulsated. Crabs scuttled across the fabulous extrusions of coral. Tuna as big as sheep drifted past. Swift, grinning dolphins raced by in pursuit of their next meal. Lovely, the Ellimist's voice once more seemed to grow from deep within my own heart. Lovely. And then, as quickly as we'd been plunged into the ocean, we were drifting above the waving golden grass of the African savanna. A pride of lions lazed in the sun below us, looking sleepily content. Wildebeests and gazelles and impalas grazed, then broke into wild, springing, bouncing races that forced you to smile at the sheer energy of it all. There were hyenas, rhinos, elephants, giraffes, cheetahs, baboons, zebras. Hawks and eagles and buzzards wheeled overhead. Look at it. Then, in an instant deep jungle, a leaf jaguar prowled while monkeys chattered in the tree canopy above. Snakes as long as a person slithered above the tree branches. The air reeked of heavy perfume of a million flowers. We heard the sounds of frogs, insects, monkeys, and wild screaming birds. In all the universe, no greater beauty. In 1,000,000 worlds, no greater art than this. Then the Ellimist showed us the human race. We flew, invisible, through the steel and glass canyons of New York City. We drifted above villages at the edges of jungle rivers. We watched a rock concert in Rio de Janeiro, and a political meeting in Seoul, and a soccer game in Durban, and an open-air market in the Philippines. Humans, crude, primitive, but capable of understanding. Suddenly, all the movement stopped. We were staring at a picture, a painting. I had seen the painting somewhere before. It was a wild swirl color, a painting of purple flowers, irises, I think, although I'm no big expert on flowers. The artist had seen the beauty of those flowers and captured some small bit of it on canvas. Capable of understanding. Then, without warning, we were back in the Yerk pool. The images were all gone. We were in the land of despair once again, surrounded by frozen images of horror. The Ellimist, or at least the body he had made for us to look at, reappeared. That was a nice tour, I said. I was trying to sound tough, but I felt as if I had been turned inside out, as if my mind had exploded into 1,000 sparkling pieces. I was overwhelmed. But what's this all about? Humans are an endangered species. Soon you will disappear. I thought of a couple things to say, but I said nothing. No one said anything. The Yerk race is also sentient, the Ellimist said. And if they are technologically more advanced than you, they will continue to infest the human race. The Andalites will try to stop them, but they will fail. The Yeerks will win. And soon, the only humans left will be what you call human controllers. I had stopped breathing. The way he said it, it was like you couldn't argue, like you couldn't say anything. He spoke every word with utter and complete certainty. He wasn't guessing. He knew. He knew that we would lose. Chapter 14. I had been terrified a few moments before, as the Taxon prepared to swallow us. I had been afraid for my own life and the lives of my friends. Now, as the Yeerk pole hung suspended in time, I felt a deeper fear. My head was still swimming from all the images the Ellimist had shown us. Why come here just to tell us we're dead meat? I managed to ask. We have an offer for you, the Ellimist said. You see, we can save a small sample of the human race. We have a planet where we would relocate you. You, some members of your family, a few others chosen to get a good genetic sampling, as well as a few non-human Earth species that are of special interest to us. I was surprised to hear Cassie actually laugh. He's some kind of environmentalist, she said. That's what he is. We're the spotted owls. We're the rhinos. We're the whales. We're the endangered species, and he's the environmentalist trying to save us. We have a planet set aside for you, the Ellimist said. It will seem very much like Earth. You would be free to evolve naturally, as your species should. This is insane, Marco said. It's like Noah's Ark. The Yeerk flood is coming. Load up the boat. No, Tobias said, staring at the Ellimist. It's a zoo. That's what he has for us. A zoo. The Ellimist said, we do not impose our will on sentient species. The decision is yours. I have chosen you to decide because only you, of all free humans, know what is happening. You must decide to stay on Earth and fight a battle you are certain to lose, or to leave this planet behind and form part of a new colony of humans. How long do we have to decide? Jake asked. You must decide now, the Ellimist said. What? I yelled. What? What are you up to? What do you mean we have to decide now? This was beyond insane. This was a dream. This couldn't even be real. I was imagining it all. If you decide the answer is yes, you and some of those who are close to will instantly be taken to your new home. If the answer is no, I will return everything to the way it was when I interrupted time. You mean we're back in Roachmorph headed down that Taxon's throat? I asked. Everything as it was, the Ellimist said. Our purpose is not to interfere. I looked at Tobias. His face showed nothing. Maybe he had forgotten how to show emotion. And our friend Tobias? Cassie asked softly. Everything as it was, the Ellimist repeated. Well, that's real fair, Marco said. You ask us this just as we're about to be some Taxon's lunch? This is ridiculous, Jake said angrily. You can't tell us that we have to make a decision like this. We're not the ones who should be deciding this. I mean, maybe you're trying to do the right thing for us, but this is nuts. Ellimists are not interested in what is fair, Axe said. Ellimists give you a choice that is no choice at all. Then they can claim that they do not interfere. They will pretend it was a human decision. It was hard to argue with Axe's opinion. The Ellimists had totally rigged this decision. Realizing that made me want to resist. The Ellimist wanted us to say yes. He wanted us to abandon the fight against the Yeerks. And yet, a place where we would have peace. A place where the fighting would be over. Where we could be normal kids. No more decisions. No more battles. The Ellimist had said we would be with some of the people we were close to. Who? Who would be saved? I vote no, Tobias said with sharp, angry defiance. You're using me. You're using my friend's affection for me as a tool. And I'm not going for it. Let's just think this over a little first, Tobias, Cassie pleaded. I mean, just because we're upset, this decision is for the whole human race. Do you understand that? He's talking about humanity becoming extinct. Tobias, you personally have a lot to lose, Jake reminded him. If we say no, you're right back in your hawk body. So we have 2 votes no, Tobias and Rachel, 1 vote yes from Cassie, Marco said. But I hadn't voted. Marco had just assumed. And he was right, I realized, with a sick churning in my stomach. Marco was right about me. I had to vote no. If Tobias was ready to stay in the fight, with all he had to lose, I couldn't do less. What this character wants us to do is run away, I said. He wants us to abandon our people and our planet just to save ourselves and the people we care about personally. Tobias met my gaze. There appeared a faint flicker of his old human smile. This is a decision for humans, Axe said. I fight the Yeerks. I follow Prince Jake. But I don't trust this Elemist, however great his power. Guys, I know how you feel, Cassie said. But think about this. We may not even get out of this Yeerk pool alive. And if we die, then what chance do humans have against the Yeerks? And anyway, he says that humans will lose. Isn't it better to save some humans rather than losing everyone? Jake and Marco had still not voted. I noticed that they were looking back towards the building we had come from, and past the building to what looked like a tall, circular column rising straight up to the rock ceiling of the cavern. The column was a mix of steel and clear glass. Inside the column was a human controller, seemingly frozen in mid-air. She looked like she had been falling down the long tube, or else flying up it. A drop shaft! We had used one aboard the Yeerk's mothership. It was a sort of elevator that worked on some invisible force to let you fall safely from one level to another. But did it go up as well as down? That was the question. Was the human controller in the shaft falling or rising? Jake cocked an eyebrow at me. He looked back to the column, making sure I noticed it. I squinted closely at the frozen controller. She had shoulder-length hair. If she were falling, it would have been swept upward. It was down around her neck. Mr. Elemist, Marco said, thanks for your offer, but I don't think so. I don't think I want to be in your little zoo. And I don't like being muscled like this. I think you like Earth. I'm glad you like Earth, but we'll take care of it the best way we can. That made it 4 against. Me, Marco, Tobias, and Axe. I counted Axe, even if it wasn't up to him. Cassie was alone in leaving in favor of the Elemist's offer. You all know I take care of a lot of sick animals. They're always afraid of me, even though I'm trying to help them. Are we being brave saying no? Or are we just being foolish, resisting someone who's trying to save us? What she said made me think. With a shock, I pictured nature films I had seen. I remembered one that showed environmentalists attempting to capture some tigers. They were trying to move the tigers to a game preserve where they would be safe. Tigers are almost extinct, and the humans were trying to save a few. But the tigers had resisted. They had growled and fought and avoided the capture nets. Was that us? Were we animals on the edge of extinction, resisting the being who'd come to save us? I wondered if I should change my vote, save myself, save my family. What would they say if they had a vote? My mom? She would never risk the lives of her children. She would vote yes. And my dad? If we were all magically transported to a safe place together and had to explain what I had done, that I had voted to save all of us and give up the fight? What would he think of that decision? You know what bothers me? I heard Jake tell the Elemist. You say the human race will lose to the Yeerks, but I don't believe you can tell the future. See, you don't know how we're going to vote. If you did, you wouldn't bother to be here, would you? He looked around at each of us. Cassie smiled sadly. If you guys vote to stay, I will too. Jake reached out and took her hand. Mr. Elemist, I guess you have your aunt. Chapter 15. Sir. Instantly, we were back in our roach bodies. If you live, I will ask once more. If you live. The red whip of the Taxon's tongue held me glued down, helpless. Morph! Morph out! Jake yelled in my head. I didn't need to be told twice. Through the fear, I focused my mind on my own human body. Suddenly, all around me went dark. We're inside the Taxon, I yelled. Focus on morphing, Jake yelled. We're busting out of here. A gush of stinging liquid, like a tidal wave, washed me from the sticky tongue. I tumbled blind and terrified through hot, viscous goo. But at the same time, I could feel that I was growing. My roach antenna brushed against something very close to me. Another cockroach. But bigger than it should have been. Demorphing, Cassie yelled. Right with you, I yelled back. Everything was closing in around me. The bodies of the others were shoved against mine as we all grew out of our roach morphs. I felt the gut of the Taxon spasming as it tried to deal with this deadly growing meal. My human lungs were going back, but as they grew, they began to need air. I was suffocating. My body was not as durable as the roach form. Air, I heard Marco cry. I can't breathe. Just keep morphing, Jake said. We'll try and pop this worm open. I have my tail again, Axe said. Should I? Yes, Jake said. Do it. The darkness around us split open suddenly. I caught a glimpse of Axe's scythe-like Andalite tail slicing the Taxon open from inside. Air! Air rushed in. Stinking, foul, vile air, but air. We exploded from the inside the Taxon, wrapped in its guts, covered with green-blue slime. We were not fully human yet, still some awful melding of human and bug, but we were finishing our demorphing as fast as we ever had. Air! I sucked it into my still-forming lungs. The Taxon lay ruined and reeking all around us. The room full of human controllers eating dinner was no longer frozen by the elements. Now they were frozen by sheer disbelief. Let's bail, I yelled, before they can think about it. We ran, slipping and slithering through the Taxon's guts, still forming the last of our fingers and toes. We tore out of there. Get them, a human voice yelled. Get them, you fools, or Visser 3 will chew your bones. Suddenly, with a roar, the human controllers surged up out of their chairs. A Hork-Bajir near the door moved swiftly to cut us off. Axe swung his tail with blinding speed. It hit the Hork-Bajir in his shoulder. Head for the drop shaft, Marco cried as he led the way from the room. Everyone but Axe, if you can morph again, do it! Jake yelled as we raced for the drop shaft. We need firepower. I didn't need to be told. The only one of us who had any kind of natural ability to fight was Axe. I was already trying to focus my mind on the bear that I had made part of me. Part of me knew it was foolish. I should morph the elephant or a wolf. I knew both of those morphs. I could handle them. But I also knew the elephant might not fit in the drop shaft. And I wanted power. Oof. Something hit me and I went sprawling across the dirt. A man stood over me. A grown man. He had slammed into me. For some reason, this outraged me. What kind of creep would hit a girl half his size? Of course I knew the answer. I knew the man was not really a man at all, but a controller. The yerk in his head didn't know or care about chivalry. The man bent over me and began to put his hands around my throat. Suddenly, he only had one hand. "Ah!" he cried, flailing back. "Thanks, Axe," I said. "We are trapped," he said. I looked past him. The others had all reached the drop shaft, 100 feet away. Between the two of us and them was a small army of human controllers and Hork-Bajir. As I watched, Marco and then Cassie were swept off the drop shaft. Only Jake was still standing there. He looked back at us with an expression of horror. "Jake, get out of here!" I screamed. "We'll be okay." Several of the controllers began closing in on Jake, but most of them had only eyes for Axe. They could see that he was an Andalite, the deadly enemy of all yerks. I don't know what they thought I was, still dripping with Taxon goo. Suddenly, a pair of Hork-Bajir warriors rushed at us. Their bladed arms slashed the air. They came at us like a pair of chainsaws on high speed. Axe struck, but the Hork-Bajir were too fast. Ah! There was a deep gash down Axe's flank. He struck again and again, his scorpion tail almost invisible. The human controller stayed prudently back, as much afraid of getting sliced and diced by the angry Hork-Bajir as by Axe. But more Hork-Bajir were rushing up, and Axe was losing ground. Then, I realized I was no longer afraid. A deep confidence had welled up inside of me. Utter confidence. Utter fearlessness. I realized I was no longer standing erect. I was on all fours. When I looked down, I expected to see my 2 hands splayed in the dirt. Instead, I saw massive paws. Coarse, dark brown fur. Black claws, each like the point of a pickaxe. I had become the bear. It was his confidence I felt. It was his total lack of fear. I was an animal that had never, in 1,000 generations of grizzly bears, known an instant of real fear. Suddenly, I felt a terrible pain in my shoulder. One of the Hork-Bajir had slashed me. I glared with nearsighted eyes and saw nothing but a tall blur. I had never morphed the bear before. I had never learned to control its brain or its instincts. The bear mind was focused completely on one basic fact. It had been challenged. There was exactly one response to being challenged. Attack. Roar! I roared. I charged the Hork-Bajir. He cut me again. It didn't matter. I barreled into him, 800 pounds of very angry grizzly. The power! I was a truck doing 70 miles an hour. I was a tank. I was the largest carnivore on land, and nothing challenged me and survived. I could barely see the Hork-Bajir through the bear's weak eyes, but I smelled him and felt him, and I swung my massive paw and hit him full in the chest. I struck him with a blow that would have knocked a train off its tracks. The Hork-Bajir went flying. More came. More discovered why part of the Latin name for grizzly species is horribilis. I barely remembered what happened next. I gave myself up to the bear's rage. Its anger and my own became one. All the tension within me, all the uncertainty, all the doubts were swept away as I gave myself up to the bear's violence. I remember that at some point, Jake got into his tiger morph and joined the fight. And I have flashing images from my memory of terrible destruction, of ripping claws and crushing jaws. But the next thing I clearly remember is flying up the drop shaft, while Jake's voice in my head kept saying, "Rachel, morph out! Morph out! You're out of control! You're out of control! Morph!" I was clawing wildly at the air, trying to kill the tiger that was suspended above me in the drop shaft. Trying to kill Jake. I felt as if I had snapped awake from a dream. Slowly, as we rose toward the surface, I left the bear and returned to myself.